Been more than a year since Russia launched its invasion in Ukraine.
A Kansas man has spent much of the last year in Ukraine using his experience in the U.S. military to support that country's forces. New at 6, Sean Logging talked with Wichitan man today about his journey there and some of his experience. Sean?
Like Rachel, Chaz Clough is one of the thousands of foreigners who went to Ukraine following Russia's invasion. He's been in Ukraine for nearly 10 months, even sharing on Ukrainian media why he went. Chaz says one of the main reasons is to share his military experience and training with Ukrainians on the front lines.
Everyone's asking us to sign their flags.
Chaz Clough was among those on the ground in Kherson shortly after it was taken back from Russian control last year.
It was just an outpouring of people just of of affection, of thankfulness, of all that. Just old ladies, grabbing you by the arms, not wanting to let you go.
But when Russia first invaded, Chaz says he was on a job in Savannah, Georgia.
2 o'clock in the morning, I was up extremely late for no reason. Just remember seeing all these, missile strikes, everything on Ukraine.
Chaz, who spent 6 years in the U.S. Navy, including during the early years of the Iraq War, says when Ukraine's president put out a call for help to train Ukrainians on Western weapons, that inspired him to volunteer in May.
What Ukraine's doing is they're fighting for their freedoms, their right to pick what church they go to, for who they want to vote for, all these kind of things. And so that kind of hit home with me being an American.
Chaz worked with volunteers from other countries to create a boot camp to train brigades with thousands of soldiers on the chain of command, weapons, warfare, and first aid.
At the beginning of the war, these guys were fishermen, they were farmers, they worked in restaurants.
Chaz says he was only planning to stay through the summer.
Little kitty, man, combat kitty.
But later joined one of the defense forces.
Kind of fell in love with the job and then also the people, knowing waking up every day, I'm doing something that's actively helping these people's, future.
Chaz says witnessing the Ukrainian people and their motivation has him wanting to see this through.
You kind of got a bully that wanted to pick on the little guy and he thought he was going to get away with it. And then you see the kid getting picked on stand up for himself. And so you're kind of like, you know what, maybe I'm going to help this kid. He's got fight in him.
Home in Wichita for about a month before returning to his unit at the end of March.